Okay? Now that said, there are other ways to do it, and they're far less effective. So I'm going to tell you about them, but I don't want you to focus on them. Okay? There is direct mail. You can develop a universe of, you know, everybody you know plus typical donors in that area, and go ahead and send them a piece of mail. If you're lucky, you'll get a 1% response. Okay? But that is a technique, and you see it, and it drives me nuts. You usually spend as much money doing it as you get back, and then on top of that, there's usually the time and effort involved. You know, if I had $1 for every time I sat around folding stuff in a 1,000-piece mailing, you know, they got back $100. You know, it's just like, why are we doing this? But again, sometimes that's a good step before the call. Okay, so know the difference. If you're going to send a piece of mail and think you're going to get money back, be smart enough to know you're tricking yourself. But if you follow it up with that other piece that I just said, then it is effective, and it'll probably increase your call success rate a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. Okay, just to be fair. The next method, here's my favorite. Let's have a barbecue and charge $50 and get the whole town to come. Well, you know, classic stuff, right? First off, the whole town's not registered to vote, so they don't care. Only half that town's registered to vote. Of that half that's registered to vote, only half of those folks are going to vote. And that's if it's presidential year. If it's not a presidential year, even less than that's going to vote. So you think about our crowd at Walmart, you know, 4 people walk by, one of them's going to vote, and that's if it's a presidential year. Okay, now that's a loose example, and you can say, well, yeah, Austin's real hippie liberal, and everybody votes, and yeah, they have a decent voter rate here, and in other places it's lower, but you know, in general, both in Texas and in the country, you know, voter participation is somewhere near 25% of the population. It's just crazy, okay? So you have to think of it in those terms. So when we're doing these events, you know, first off, 1 out of 4 people aren't even going to vote, or 3 out of 4 aren't even going to vote, so they really don't care. So the trick is finding enough people who really care. How does that end up happening? It always usually goes back to, well, who do you know? Or who are the local Democratic donors? And so it ends up becoming, okay, fine, we can have this barbecue. But what you need to understand is the act of printing a ticket and mailing it to these 500 people and having this party, as I like to call them, is not in and of itself going to raise the money. What you then have to do is take that list of 500 people and get on the phone and call them and ask them all to come. That's what you have to do. Okay, so if you're going to do an event or you're going to do a mailing, you know, and you think it's a quote, way to raise money, it can be in conjunction with the real way to raise money, which is to get on the phone and ask for it. Okay? So just so you understand the difference there. Then there's the new cool way to raise money, which is online, the internet, through your website, all this sort of stuff. Okay? We hear about it every day. Hillary raises X amount on the internet. Barack raises, you know, gets 80,000 donors in the first quarter. And all that is great and awesome. And the cool part is that it's trickling down every year, every cycle, more and more to smaller size campaigns. And eventually it'll all go to that where, you know, this cycle, I'll bet you half of all money donated politically comes via an online contribution portal, period. And it keeps getting higher and higher that way. So what is our tool here? Well, it's the internet, and we have an online portal and a way to accept credit cards, etc., online contributions. But usually that's driven by the people you called plus the people that find you on the internet. Okay, well, how do you drive those people to find you on the internet? Well, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can go in different websites and blog. You can buy email lists. You can collect email lists. You can send email updates asking for money or asking them to go to your website. And those are effective techniques. But again, let's not kid ourselves. A lot of that money that's driven from the internet, and I'm not talking about the presidentials, but the campaigns below that, a lot of the money comes on the internet because you've called them or because you've asked them. Okay, or you've sent them something in addition to calling them. It's not just the email alone that does it. I have a candidate right now, and we just began the process of calling and raising money. And he had 20,000, let's round numbers, and I'm not exactly right here, but it was around $20,000 in pledges. And he comes in and he says, I say, how much of your pledges did you get back? Oh, I got $10,000. And he said, what's cool is half of it came over the internet. You said half the money would come over the internet, half the money came over the internet. And I said, okay. And he said, that's great, these people just found me and gave me money. And I said, no, you don't get it. So we went, we printed it out because he wasn't sure who'd given. He just knew the total amount. So we go back and we print out the list of who'd given, and it was every single person who'd given was either someone who'd been called or a relative of someone we had called. Okay, so that's an important point. We got the person we called, plus we got a friend, a straggler, a relative here and there. And so when you hear you raise money you don't know about or new money over the internet, a lot of times that's where it comes from. It comes from that engine in the car, if you will, of the call program and the candidate meeting with folks, person to person or on the phone. A lot of good spins out of that, and if you have an internet presence and a way to capture credit card contributions, etc., then you can build it that way. So does anybody have any questions about that? Yes?
Do you let the candidate see who donated what dollar?
Oh yeah, it was just, first the amount shows up on a public part, and so you have to download it, and we were just in between that step where we hadn't downloaded it yet to see who'd actually given the money. But of course, they need to know who gives, because, and this will lead me to how you actually execute a call program. It's not good enough to just say, well, I'm going to call a bunch of people and ask them for money. We've said that that's what you need to do. Well, how do you actually do that part of it? Well, first we start with our targets and we figure out who all those folks are, and then we feed them into a database, whatever kind of database you want to create, and then from there we'll generate lists and we'll sit there and call and go about the process of doing it. What do you need to say when you're on the phone? I'll just go through that real quick. What do you need to say is kind of a 5-step thing to me. It's first, and a lot of candidates forget this, it's hello, how are you? It's amazing. They get on the phone and it's, well, I'm running because of X, Y, and Z. No. Think about if you called a friend you hadn't talked to in a while, what's the first thing you do? You know, hey Bob, how you been? How's your wife? How's the kids? You still playing golf? You know, whatever. So you start that with the hello and let's warm them up part. And it's important enough that in all my stuff I give candidates or documents when we go through these 5 points, I always put that as point 1. And you know, the smart ones look at me and go, well, yeah, I get it. And I say, no, it's important. You got to do it. And I'll go and I'll sit with candidates, and it's amazing how many times they'll forget to do it. And trust me, you kind of lose touch real quick with your target if you sit there and you get into that automaton, I'm going down the list and I'm making this script. You know, you really got to connect personally first with the donor before you try and ask them for money, okay? So that's one. How are you? Connect with them, ask them about how they are, not about how you are necessarily, okay? So number 2, you need to tell them why you're running for XYZ office. It's not enough to just assume that they know why you're running, or for them to say, oh, you're a striver and you've always been into politics and you're ambitious or whatever, and I always knew you were going to run. And you'll hear that, you know. But fundamentally, when you're calling folks, you need to give them a concrete reason to run. If I'm going to go to my dad when I'm a little kid and ask him for some money, you know, I need to tell him what I'm going to do with that money and why I need it and why it's important, okay? So we need to tell them why you're running. If you're running because of education, say so. If you're running, you know, for, you know, tougher gun laws or, you know, not tougher gun laws, tell them that. You know, tell them whatever reason it is that you're running. Go ahead and be honest with folks, okay? Say, this is why I'm running and this is who I am. And then tell them a little bit about, if they don't already know you, tell them some key background points about why you're running. Excuse me. Okay. So number 2, why you're running, for what office. Okay. Number 3 is, I need your help. Okay. Another very important step that candidates like to skip. Okay. If I'm going to ask you for something, you know, I just don't roll into, you know, Jessica, I need your bike, you know, give it to me. Jessica, can I borrow your bike to go to the store to get something and I'll have it back in an hour? Well, then Jessica's going to think about it in her mind and go, yeah, okay, well, I can do that. But, you know, Jessica, give me my bike. No, that's not going to happen, right? So what we need to do after we've told them why we're running and why it's important, then we need to ask them for their help, okay? And it sounds like a simple step, but you have to say, will you help me? And shut up and stop. Candidate, you know, don't overtalk yourself. You hear this all the time with the candidate. They'll say, will you help me? And then they'll start talking again. Why? Because they're nervous. They don't like to ask for help. Nobody does. It's not human nature. So you ask for the help, and the key then is to be disciplined and to be quiet. And let them respond to you. And they will tell you right there in point 3 whether they'll help you or not. Okay?